Now, I don't know about you, but over the last year, I've been doing some really serious daydreaming about my dream garage. Currently, we've got the Ferrari F40, the Porsche GT2 RS, Golf Mark 1 and the Lotus Avaya, of course, but it's consistently changing. However, you are right, I haven't won the Euro Millions yet, so let's get back to reality. And when we're in the real world, well, unfortunately, we can't change our cars like we change our socks. So we have to get, well, a bit of an all-rounder. And if we're talking all-rounders, well, let's talk about this. This is the Skoda Octavia vRS estate. Now, I've got to say, I've always kind of liked the vRS models from Skoda. They're a bit more speedy, affordable, well-made, and they always tend to have the styling on the right side of subtle. But the Octavia estate, well, even more so, because it adds the carrying capacity of a small van without actually looking like a small van. No offence to van drivers, of course.
So how about a plug-in hybrid vRS Octavia with the same amount of power as the traditional 2-litre turbo petrol version? A brisk 0 to 62 time of 7.3 seconds, 130 miles per hour top speed, and yet 39 miles of electric-only range and up to 235 mpg? And most crucially for you company car drivers, 10% benefit-in-kind tax.
Yes, I thought that might get your attention, although I am going to throw in the usual disclaimer that says in the real world, it is very unlikely you are going to get those official figures. Although maybe you are a miracle worker, perhaps you do, in which case we want to hear from you in the comments below. Speaking of which, have you subscribed? If not, please do subscribe below. We love hearing from you. Thank you for all the support so far. And welcome to the Electrifying family. I'm Nikki Shields, and this is electrifying.com. So the Octavia, the lab stats might have already grabbed your attention, but the actual car may not have done. And that is the problem with the vRS models. They're not exactly flash, but I mean that in a good way.
Basically, the PHEV isn't much different from the standard vRS externally or in terms of equipment, and gets the same bumpers front and back, blackened out grille and 19-inch alloys. Although it doesn't get the vRS's lowered suspension. Because of the 13 kWh battery sitting underneath, it actually rides at the same height as the standard Octavia IV, though I don't especially notice the difference. After all, what's 15mm between friends?
Now, another thing for those PHEV spotters out there, one to tick off the list is you do have your extra charging flap just there, nice and small, which is nice because sometimes they can be oversized and I don't really understand why. Now, the only disappointing thing with this is the boot space, because you lose a whopping 150 litres. Now, that is equivalent to a big suitcase, to be honest, and that's due to the positioning of the battery. So unfortunately the boot is a bit smaller. However, it does have a lovely flat floor, which is really convenient, and of course you can put the 3 rear seats down to make a mega boot. Otherwise inside, well, it's pretty much the same as the standard vRS, which means you get these awesomely comfortable seats. You get a pair of 10-inch screens in front of you. Now, the one here in the middle is for stuff like sat-nav, music, driving modes and aircon. And then the virtual cockpit dials are ahead of you, which you can actually customise to suit your kind of styling. Now, the other good thing is if you're using the car navigation, then you get the map right in front of you, which I really liked. Although I found that when I'm using the Apple CarPlay, so if I'm using my maps from my phone, the information actually only comes up on the centre display, which is a bit annoying. Now, there are no physical aircon buttons, which is a bit of a shame, but Skoda has built in some kind of common sense into the voice control. If I say, for instance, my hands are cold, then the heated steering wheel instantly turns on and I get warm air pumped out through the vents that are nearest my fingers, which I think is brilliant because I always have freezing cold hands. So that's a nice little added extra. But it wouldn't be a vRS without a bit of driving pep now, would it? And that is where things get interesting.
Now, where the normal vRS is powered by 2 litres of petrol or diesel power, this vRS gets the same oily and electrical bits as the VW Golf GTE, as well as a host of other VW Group cars. So that means a 1.4 litre TSI turbo petrol engine mated to a 114 brake horsepower electric motor, 13 kilowatt hour battery and a 6-speed double clutch gearbox, which all throws itself through the front wheels. It's about half a second slower to 62 miles per hour than the petrol VRS, but Skoda reckons that because of the extra torque of the electric motor, the PHEV is actually 2.2 seconds quicker from 50 to 70 miles per hour, which is useful for overtaking.
It's certainly rapid, but it's not the kind of acceleration that makes you worry about your hat falling off. It's relatively amusing, but I'm not guaranteeing loads of laugh out loud moments. It's a mature drive, but having driven it for a bit, well, there are a couple of things that I don't like. First up, adding 170 kilos of battery and an electric motor doesn't exactly make the plug-in VRS feel any more nimble, even if you try messing around with the various mode settings. Yes, it's competent and grippy, but it's just not quite as good as the one without the hybrid bits, I've got to say. It also takes a good firm push on the brake pedal to actually get it to brake the way you want it to. Don't worry, it will stop, but you just have to apply a little bit more pressure than you'd expect. It also won't manage as far on EV only as the figures suggest. Not unique to this car, of course. Unfortunately, it is across the board with most plug-in hybrids and electric cars. However, it is more like 25 to 30 miles in this car, whereas the quoted figure is 39 miles. I mean, that is enough to cover the average commute, but it's somewhere shy of the official stat.
It didn't ride as well as I was expecting. It didn't feel quite as solid and comforting as I'd hoped. It was quite light on the steering, although I do think for long journeys it would be a great car.
You know the other thing I keep thinking? The police love driving a Skoda VRS, right? And now I completely see why, because actually it does all the things that a traffic officer needs. You can carry a load of kit, it's fast enough, it's comfortable, and the secret weapon. It isn't too obvious. Understated, so they can quietly sneak up on you when you least expect it. Sneaky.
If you decide to follow the leads and charge the Skoda, a home wall box will see a full battery in around 3.5 hours. And if you were to do that enough and weirdly live in a laboratory, well, you'd see between 176.6 mpg and 256.8 mpg. For fleets or business users, the emissions in MPG matters because it means the VRS with a plug gets taxed at 10% rather than the petrol version's 37%, and that alone can save hundreds of pounds a year.
Though, as ever with plug-ins, the actual MPG will depend hugely on how you drive it and how much you plug it in. If you're careful, drive like you have sore toes, well, you're going to get something like 70 miles per gallon with average electric top-ups. However, thrash it around, fail to charge, and, well, I found that the PHEV actually does more like 40 mpg, which isn't much more than a petrol car. Now, with a petrol hatchback VRS costing from £31,835, and then the PHEV version coming at £35,020 for the hatchback, and then £36,000 and £20 for the estate. Well, there's enough of a price difference there to make the sums really quite different, especially if you're not a business user. I think the issue here is that the Octavia VRS with a plug ends up being in a bit of a weird niche. I really do like it as an all-rounder, but if you are all about the driving, well, then you're probably better off in just a standard petrol VRS. However, if you're really into comfort, then there's the normal Octavia IV plug-in that doesn't try to be sporty at all. So I'm still not quite sure if this is a total sweet spot or it lies in no man's land. I think, as ever, it's all dependent on how angelic you are with the charging as to whether it makes financial sense. Although if you are buying this as a company car, well, it is an absolute no-brainer when it comes to the finances. Having said all of that, it doesn't stop it from being a supremely practical and useful Swiss Army knife of a car.
Please do like, subscribe and comment on this video, and do tell us whether you think you could make a VRS plug-in work or reckon you could be better off with a straight petrol or diesel. It's not as clear-cut as you think. Plus, let me know, how did I get on with my dream garage?